Hello there. We're going to be talking about dialogic theory, so I just wanted to start off by briefly going over something that Dr. Braddock mentioned in last week's lecture, because I think that it summarizes the goal of this theory very efficiently. According to her lecture, the goal of dialogic public relations theory is simply to create ways for the public to communicate with organizations in a way that they're exchanging ideas and their opinions are being heard. And a main way for an organization to ensure that the public's opinions are being heard is to actually engage in meaningful dialogue with them in order to affirm what they're communicating. So its goal is essentially to create ways to give the public a voice in terms of an organization's online digital communication channels. Now, in terms of Kent and Taylor's research, and these are the researchers that have contributed a great amount to dialogic theory as we know it today, and we will definitely be talking about them very soon. Dialogic communication refers to any negotiated exchange of ideas and opinions. It refers to a particular type of relational interaction that revolves around neutral, two-way communication, where each party in the relationship is seen as equal to the other, and an actual relationship occurs through communication where dialogue is present. So what does this mean? It means that dialogic communication is a product of communication. It's not a means to an end, but rather an end goal in itself. It's not a vehicle to deliver an organization to the ultimate form of communication with their public. It's the destination. So, for instance, people leaving comments on Corksicle's Facebook page receive personalized responses to help them with their problem, or simply as a reply to their praise or complaints. If someone leaves a comment on Tiffany & Co.'s page, they'll definitely have a different response. They can expect a copy-pasted response, which might not even be related to their post, as you can see in the bottom image. Corksicle's dialogue with its customers always gives them complete solutions or some sort of mutual exchange. It's a dialogue where both the organization and public communicate with each other equally. Someone states their problem or comment, and that organization shows that they care and want to solve any problems that the public is having. Because mutual dialogue occurred in Corksicle's case, they reached an end goal of dialogic communication with their public. Organizations that function more like Corksicle Online are essentially trying to surpass earlier communication theories, which focus mainly on symmetric communication revolving around getting that feedback from the public, and they're doing this by also responding to their public and treating them as equals, and therefore as true patrons in their organization. This method of mutual digital communication creates strong bonds between organizations and the public. So let's put this into a historical perspective. As you can see, our timeline starts with Martin Buber, at least I hope that's how you pronounce his last name, and that is because in their 1998 article, researchers Michael L. Kent and Maureen Taylor cite him as being the father of the modern concept of dialogue. In that same article, they explain that Buber's work is based on reciprocity, mutuality, involvement, and openness, which is the essence of their own definition of dialogic theory, where mutual communication is the vehicle in which a strong bond between an organization and the public is established. It's what their definition of this theory originated from, essentially. As I have mentioned, the two researchers that we'll be focusing on are Kent and Taylor. In that same article that was published in 1998, they focused on how organizations can build meaningful dialogic relationships in an online setting. And just a few years later, in 2002, they reframed this theory and its tenets through a lens concentrating on the public relations field. And those tenets from their more recent work are the ones that we'll be focusing on today. So here's just a little chart so that you can better visualize the 5 main tenets from Kent and Taylor's research, which are mutuality, propinquity, empathy, risk, and commitment. These are the key features that are required of organizations in order to successfully practice dialogic communication with the public. To give an overview of these key points, these tenets state that dialogic theory recognizes that there is an organization-public relationship, also known as OPR, and requires that relationship to be open, mutual, and spontaneous. They also require organizations to ensure that they are communicating in a manner that displays empathy towards the public and their needs, and require them to allow the public to see them in a vulnerable position, which is to the public's benefit. Lastly, they call for organizations to demonstrate that they are committed to this kind of communication, which fortifies their relationship with the public. These tenets state what organizations should practice in order to successfully communicate with their public. In terms of mutuality, this tenet is just identifying that there is an organization-public relationship that involves collaboration and the idea of mutual equality in a conversation, in a dialogue. It allows the public to be able to share their opinions openly and equally with an organization. The next tenet is propinquity, which Kent and Taylor describe as the temporality and spontaneity of interactions with publics. This kind of communication is based on time, it's based on immediacy, it's a spontaneous occurrence. Organizations have to be willing to consult with their public in matters that affect them at the time and in the space or the channel that the public wants it to be in. For instance, if someone tweets about their terrible experience to JetBlue on a flight that they were on, like this customer whose TV wasn't working properly for the duration of the flight, the organization should reply instantly and accommodate their needs. JetBlue does reply almost immediately and offers that customer a credit for their troubles. The communication is quick and occurs in the shared space that is convenient to the customer. The next tenet is empathy. Empathy obligates organizations to support and confirm any goals or needs that the public might have in order to build trust. So it calls for organizations to be supportive, inclusive, and cohesive in terms of their wants. It's about providing confirmation of their concerns and giving them a voice and not ignoring what they have to say after giving them that voice. So if an organization gives the public the space on Facebook, for instance, to voice their opinions, they shouldn't ignore them, whether the organization is in agreement with them or not. For instance, a few years ago, Applebee's fired a waitress for posting an image of a customer's receipt because it had the customer's information on it. That would have been okay, but soon the public discovered that another Applebee's location had put up another picture with the same amount of customer information, but it shed Applebee's in a positive light, so they were praised for that same action. When the public discovered the perceived hypocritical actions that Applebee's took, their Facebook page was flooded with negative comments by customers. After seeing this, Applebee's hid that post, which angered the public even more and resulted in tens of thousands of people leaving even more negative comments than before. The reason that Applebee's caught even more hate by deleting their post was that they didn't empathize with their customers and removed their space to express their concerns. That was a bit of a power play, and it demonstrated to the public that the organization didn't empathize with their concerns and felt that their concerns were insignificant enough to be deleted or removed. They denied them the space to express their opinions and ideas, which is neglectful of Dialogic strategy. And if you do want to read about that situation, there's a link in the video description of NBC News, but there's also a step-by-step link of a WordPress article. I'm not sure how credible it is, but it is easier to follow. The next tenet is risk. Organizations should be willing to take risks when it comes to interacting with their public. Since they're interacting on the public's terms and not on their own terms, that can make organizations vulnerable to consequences that they are not expecting. For example, Entenmann's took a huge risk on their Twitter account a few years ago, and they honestly have never fully recovered from it. They surfed on the trending topics wave and took a chance with this not guilty tweet. While it may look like a normal, innocent tweet, the hashtag was actually in reference to the verdict of Casey Anthony's trial, and as you probably all remember, that was an extremely controversial topic, and a lot of people turned to social media, specifically Twitter, to vent about it. So when the public realized that the organization was trying to gain brand exposure by riding on the coattails of that trending hashtag, that gave them a feeling of negativity and anger for a lot of Twitter users in the Twitterverse. So the company received a flood of hate, and that mostly scared them off of using that social media site. Since then, they do use their Twitter account, but it's mostly used for customer service inquiries to play it safe. And the last tenet is commitment. Organizations have to showcase that they're entirely committed and willing to keep their communication dialogic, in that dialogic format. They have to demonstrate consistency in their commitment in order to create an environment for honest conversation between the organization and their public. So let's move over to theory application. As you can see, I wanted to focus on Coke for this case study. And while this brand does utilize all of the major social networks, I wanted to focus on their Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram account, which accounts for millions of followers and likes. And as you can see, Facebook is kind of their main player there. Coca-Cola uses their Facebook and Twitter accounts pretty well in terms of continuing a dialogue with their fans. They like the public's comments on Facebook and Twitter and reply to their comments, mostly focusing on replying to their consumers' customer service inquiries and also engaging in sort of funny banter with the fans. Sadly, and this might attribute to their low follower count, they don't do any of this on their Instagram account. They only produce content like videos and images, like you have to produce for Instagram. You have to post it on there to post anything. But their captions are sort of dead-end captions. They don't engage the public in dialogic communication at all. This social media site, which is supposed to be a space for two-way communication, is mainly being used as a method for one-way communication. It's a very traditional method, and it's almost archaic to use this method in such a new social network that's aimed at younger generations, because these younger generations typically resist traditional one-way communication methods anyway. So what can Coca-Cola be doing better? In terms of communication, they could really be doing better by actually engaging with their audience on Instagram and engaging them more often on Twitter and Facebook. While they do engage in sort of friendly banter at times with those that mention them in tweets, they mostly only address customer service inquiries. It's not a terrible method, but it would be better if they created dialogue with all kinds of people trying to converse with them by mentioning them or hashtagging them. By doing so, they could be responsible for creating a space for anyone wanting to engage with them. On Facebook, they're doing pretty well, but what they don't do a lot is reply to negative comments. They only focus on positive ones, and that doesn't leave room for dialogic communication to occur because they're not communicating with all fans if they don't agree with Coca-Cola or shed the company in a good light. In terms of the 5 tenets, none of the social media sites that Coca-Cola owns and runs are practicing dialogic communication to its full potential. They're ignoring all or some of the 5 tenets and therefore not properly exemplifying dialogic communication. This is especially true on their Instagram account, where their messages are totally monologic. They're sending out messages to the public, but the replies that they receive are ignored, almost entirely cutting off any form of dialogic relationship before it even has a chance to occur. Coca-Cola has the capacity to apply this theory in new ways in the future on all of their social media accounts. They can do this by ensuring that their social media team is appropriately replying to all kinds of comments on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, regardless of if they're negative or positive, but only as long as they require a response. For example, if someone on Instagram just tags their friend, there's really no potential response that you could give because you're not sure if they're tagging them for whichever reason. So if it requires a response, it should get a response. Negative comments should definitely be responded to, and they actually put the organization in a positive light because negative comments give organizations the opportunity to exemplify transparency and impartiality and demonstrate that they are there for the public, whether or not the public is a fan of their products or brand. And Starbucks is actually a great example of that. They've been warding off negative comments surrounding their supposed distaste for veterans and troops since the early 2000s, and they do so with tactful posts that spread correct information about their social responsibility. Also, in terms of original content and posts, maybe Coca-Cola could pose a question every once in a while or make their original content more engaging. They could create that content in a way that almost inspires or sort of requires the audience to, or the public to reply so that the organization can engage in an actual conversation and keep a dialogue going with the public once they leave their replies. So, for instance, like this Walmart photo, by posting a caption, "This photo," with like a Coca-Cola product in sight, people will be able to reply their captions, and then Coca-Cola could reply to their responses, and that could just keep the conversation going, and an actual dialogue could be created with a post like that. Coke could also make it easy on themselves and create a campaign without having to create any original content, since they already have so much content from being around for so many years. If you are alive and you are on Earth, you've had some sort of exposure to Coca-Cola in your life. Whether it was a commercial playing in the background, a billboard that you passed, or an ad on the subway, it was present in your life in some way. My entire household doesn't drink Coca-Cola, and we still somehow own novelty Coke items. We have Coke plates and a toothpick dispenser and those little green cups, the original Coke cups, and we have Coke in our fridge in case guests come by. Whether we realize it or not, it's present in our lives, and we all have some sort of memory attributed to the brand. Like I said, Coca-Cola has really been around. They've been around for 125 years, and they've penetrated the global market. So they have a bit of leverage, and that leverage is long-term nostalgia. Coke could simply recycle old content, and with those posts, ask their public to share their Coke stories with, for instance, this hashtag #MyCokeStory. People are already sharing their stories on Coke's posts, so this could just create a space for them to share it and give Coca-Cola the opportunity to engage them in meaningful dialogue. Coke can monitor and maintain these conversations by following the main tenets of dialogic communication.